What is going on, you North Arctic Dumbo Octopi? In today's video, if you're reading the screen or read the title, we're going over some potential god changes for every single character in Smite headed into Smite 2. But also, if you're reading the screen, this is part 1, so the first 30 gods. If we get to 1,000 likes on this video, we'll drop the part 2. So my community and I have been working on this god doc, is what I'm calling it, the god document. We're basically adding at least one change to every single character in Smite to sort of liven up their kit, make them feel fresh, and sort of push the limits of the new engine that Hi-Rez is working on. For Smite 2. That's basically it. I don't want to jerk you guys too much longer, so let's try and get to the meat and potatoes of everything. And I am using a PowerPoint. I really like PowerPoint. Some of the other YouTubers that I watch use them, and I think they're good, and they help to organize stuff. So that's what we're using today. Some notes real quick is my community helped with most of these. These aren't all my original ideas. Like I said, we've been working on this God doc on stream for the past few weeks. So a lot of these are a result of that. This is just for fun. I don't have like an insight. I mean, I do have some sort of an insight with Hi-Rez, but this isn't like to say that any of these changes will even be implemented whatsoever. Maybe if some of the ideas are cool and people like them, we can send them over to Hi-Rez, but for the most part, this is just for fun. Some of these changes are small, some are big, some are OP, and some are just straight up silly. I wouldn't want all the complex changes implemented either if I was a designer. The designers would actually have to like balance the number of simple kits versus complex / difficult ones. This is just to say like, a lot of these changes can be pretty crazy, and that doesn't mean that if I was working on the game, I would throw all of these into the game. You know, some of them are just, you know, maybe for inspiration or just kind of push the mechanics of things, try and make it a little bit more fun. So the objective was to make characters feel fresh going into Smite 2 while retaining the essence of their kit. So you don't want to change them too much. You want the mains of these characters to still be happy, while maybe adding some options and some more fun variety to their kits. So that's kind of what we wanted to do. There are some exceptions to that because I think there are some kits that just suck and are very boring, so we kind of reworked them completely. But yeah, some changes could be swapped here and there, but we tried to fit with the god's lore and style. This is just to say maybe here and there, one mechanic could swap it over this other god. You could use it as inspiration for another kit, that type of thing, but it's still supposed to sort of fit the god's lore, like the goddess of music or the god of death, stuff like that. It's kind of tied to the kit. So, and big shout out to Tim the Enchanter 15. He's a regular and a friend of mine on stream. He kind of cooked up a lot of these ideas. He was kind of a goat when it came to that. So yeah, shout outs to Tim. So next slide. Let's begin with Achilles. It's sort of in alphabetical order. It gets a little bit different towards the end. We'll talk about it once we get there. But yeah, going in alphabetical order. Oh, and also, if you guys watched the Matt's video, that was a good video. I'm not jacking his idea. I promise you guys. We've been working on this for weeks. In fact, Matt was in our stream the other day suggesting ideas. So, you know, great minds think alike, of course. So, yes, let's begin with Achilles. So, Achilles 3 now leaves a residual from where you dash that increases the jab damage if the damage successfully avoided with the dodge, basically rewarding the combat dodging. I kind of said that incorrectly, but you know what I mean. So, basically what this means is if you're like against a Poseidon, and he doesn't cripple you, of course, with his 3, he krakens you, but you dash it, you 3 away, the residual that's left behind, let's say it's like almost like a ghost or something. It doesn't have to be a ghost, some sort of a thing in line with Achilles' lore. If it absorbs that Kraken damage and gives you like maybe like a 50% increase of whatever the damage was that you avoided to your jab, that might be too much. You know, you'd have to bounce the numbers. But basically just rewards, it makes it so it rewards the combat dodging aspect of Achilles, which fits with his lore and makes that ability actually more of like a combat dodge, because right now you kind of just click it whenever it's up and chase people with it, so you can kind of give it more of a reward when it comes to that, and make it hit a little bit harder so you can be more viable in the jungle. So I think that'd be kind of fun for him. Also, shout outs to, this was from a YouTube comment a while back, and I was like, that's actually a really cool idea for Achilles. I forget who it was, I'm sorry. Hopefully if you're watching this you can say that this was your idea, and then I can give you credit. But yeah, shout outs to you. Moving on, we have Agni. So just make his passive proc the stun. Pretty simple change. Everybody knows what Agni's passive does. Just make it proc the stun. I think that'd be a nice little addition. Also, you can make it so Agni 1 marks enemies, so they leave a trail of gas that stuns along the line, like old Soul 3. So instead of just always clicking 2 and then 1 and stunning them in that circle, or always clicking your ult and then your 1 and stunning them in that circle, this gives a little bit more variety in a team fight, where you can actually place your 1 down, not stun anybody right away, but everybody, it's like a area of effect. If they walk through it, they're going to have that gas line walking and trailing behind them, and then stun everybody in that line. And I think it would just give it some variety to Agni's kit. And also along that same lines, you could change his 1 interaction based on 2ing or ulting before or after. So basically what that means is once you get good at Agni, all you ever do is click 2-1 or ult 1. You never place your 1 before. When you first start playing Agni, you might start doing that because you're just not fast enough with your keyboard and everything. But it does get to the point where you're just 2-1ing or ult-1ing. So you can actually make it do something different if you 1 and then 2, or 1 and then ult. So if you 2-1, it's a stun. If you ult-1, it's a stun. But if you 1-2, maybe it's a knock-up. Or if you 1-ult, maybe it just does something different completely. So I think that'd be a cool thing you could add to Agni, sort of give him some options, give him some different combos, so he's not super monotonous after you actually learn how to play him where you're just 2-1ing, ult-1ing. So yeah, moving on. I'm using Cobb. Didn't cook up too much with AMC. I think his kit's actually pretty cool. I think it fits around his lore of the bees and everything. One thing you could do is if you 2-3 on top of your own hive, it creates a mini fear, and it's very small, a very short duration, just for a little bit of self peel. Nothing absolutely OP. This would also require you to click 3 buttons in very quick succession that you're not really doing damage with, so I think it would be balanced. So if you're just placing your hive, then you 2 and you 3 right on top of it as you're running away from them. You're running away, it'll just fear them away so you can peel a little bit. Then also you can make it so when the enemies destroy your hives, it applies bees again. I say again because this used to be a thing. I don't know why they removed it. I think it's a cool little thing to add to his kit. And then I threw in Mega Hive capability, construct additional hives. This is just a silly thing I added. You could maybe add like an RTS aspect where if you combine hives, you get a Mega Hive. That was just silly. I'm just doing that. Threw that in there for fun. Also, shout out to StarCraft. Puch is up next. So you can allow the choice to let his 1 go under minions and not stop on them, so that if you're trying to poke an enemy in lane, a lot of times the minions will just be blocking it. So you can actually give it another option. Maybe if you click 1 again, it'll go underground and they'll come up on the other side, and you can poke them with that. Give them a little bit more viability, because Puch, traditionally speaking, has had a lot of weaknesses, and that's definitely one of them. Another thing you could do is you could allow his ult to activate idle bodies to become sort of like zombies. They would act sort of like Nuon minions or old Persephone too. Or they could even just block and run towards enemies. They don't have to do damage. They don't have to be super annoying. They could just be like an impassable thing that either blocks abilities, blocks autos, or blocks movement. This would also reset his 1 cooldown. So when you ult, it would reset the 1 cooldown if you have bodies on the ground. That way, if you're around an objective, if you're around like an important fight around like the beacon or whatever, some objective, if you have bodies on the ground and you ult and they go flying at the enemies, you can still 1 and explode that, just to give him some more combos, some more potential. And I think it would fit really well with his lore and the fact that he's like, the god of decay. There should be like, it'd just be cool to have zombies on the map, in my opinion. And I think that'd be a cool way to do it. And also his ult is called Empty the Crypts. So if there's bodies already on the ground, making them like kind of have some personality and livening them up a little bit, I think it would just be kind of cool. So yeah. Amaterasu kind of cooked with this one as well. So depending on your stance, your Ama 3 and your 2 change. So your damage stance 3 becomes a short dash that applies a burn or a dot, plus your passive. And then your movement speed stance 2 can be placed and acts as a mini compassion, and Ama can actually TP to it. So basically what this means is your damage stance or your power stance, the 2 is the exact same, but your 3, instead of being that long silence dash, it just becomes a short dash that applies your a burn plus the passive. This allows Ama late game to get her passive off without dying, because you need 3 autos to apply your passive to enemies late game, which is really not that realistic in a lot of scenarios. So that just gives you the option to kind of do that. And then also, the second change was that in her movement speed stance, your dash and silence are going to be the same, but her 2 acts as a mini compassion. You can place it on the ground, so it's like a shield that's absorbing damage. And then also, if you run away from it, say you're like walking towards your teammates to peel, you can TP back to it. And I even suggested maybe you could TP while ulting. So in the middle of your ult, you could TP back and stun somebody that's like right next to it. I don't know. I think that'd be pretty cool. This just gives her some more flexibility, especially in the support role with the compassion type ability. Gives her a little bit more mobility as well, because you can TP and you're in your movement speed stance. And yeah, just gives her some options. And I think this would be really cool and, help with applying your passive and such late game. So yeah, kind of cook with that one, I think. Pretty cool. Anhur's up next. So Anhur's a pretty freaking cool character, and already has a pretty high skill ceiling, and I don't think you really want to mess up his kit too much. So he's one of those characters I think you don't really need to add really anything, and he still will be fun in Smite 2. And they've already added some stuff to him. They already changed his ult, so. But yeah, Pillar impaling someone sends a shockwave out in the AoE, so you're rewarding people for that really high skill ability. and it does AoE damage and increases the pillar benefit. So if there's like a 10% damage increase on the pillar, you make it a 20% if you pillar impel somebody, and it pulses out. And yeah, it just rewards people for making a cool play. And then another thing you could do is you could add an additional bush mechanic to Anhur's passive. So there's bushes in Smite 2 now, and Anhur's like this, you know, he's a lion, you know, so make him be able to do something when he comes out of a bush. Maybe he gets a little bit extra movement speed, maybe like a slight damage increase, maybe just add like an extra ability that he can do out of the bush. I think that'd be kind of cool. Didn't really cook that far with that one, but you know, keeping it vague sometimes nice. Just give a little bit of inspiration. Maybe you guys can throw something down in the comments that he could do. So yeah, moving on. Anubis, I really like this one. Even though this isn't even that crazy of a change, or at least it's like pretty simple, I think it just should change his kit so much. So allow Anubis to swap places with his wrap target from his 2. The animation would have like the underworld, you know, since he's the god of the underworld, or something like that. I don't know, but you know what I mean. He would pull the other god down and switch with them. So sort of like his 3 of those hands, the grasping hands that come out from underground, they would literally pull him down and you would swap places. So let's say like you're at your tower line. He's already a pretty immobile, easy to kill character. If you're at your tower line and somebody's trying to dive you and you're able to stun them, but you're in the tower, you could swap with them. They'd be under the tower taking tower shots. You could turn around and ult them. And it just gives so much outplay potential. Give him a little bit of mobility, nothing too crazy. And yeah, I think it'd just be a cool change. So definitely some cool plays you can make with this. That's the only thing you'd have to do to him. Moving on. Okay. This is a big one. Kuang. Reason we kind of cook with this one is because he's like the water dragon, and all you ever do is execute people and turn into the dragon. And I feel like you could, I don't know, there's just a lot of missed potential there. He's also always just been sort of a pub stomper and never that viable of a character. So you could nerf his base form if you made this change, but here we go. Upon executing someone, you land as the dragon with a different character model, and you have a new ability / enhanced set that probably lasts like 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. Enhanced set or enhanced kit, basically. So when you land after executing somebody, it orbital strikes the ground. There's a character in League of Legends. This is just like a huge explosion, basically, and you guys know what an orbital strike is for the most part. It knocks everyone away from you besides the target that you selected or landed on. This sort of keeps everybody away. You're an assassin type character, so you're landing on them, pushing everybody away, and allowing yourself to cast on this character that you're trying to kill next. So it kind of fits an assassin playstyle. You get a new kit, like I said. So your new dragon, DF stands for dragon form. Your dragon form 1 becomes a slither / dash forward, since you're kind of like a dragon. It does damage and it slows them. You go through them. You can go through multiple targets. Your dragon form 2 drops small water dragons around you that take a moment before they move. Then they come back to you. They return to you, doing damage the whole way. So think like old Rat 2. If you never played with old Rat 2, he would drop like nuts around him, let's say like 15, and then you could dash through people, and you have to position behind them so that all of the all of the nuts would go through them, and you would get a bunch of damage if you did it correctly. It was a nice like high skill ceiling ability. I can't believe they ever. It's sort of like Pele 1 if you think about it, but just a little bit different. But yeah, I think like kind of returning to that whole original Rat 2 would be cool. The Dragon Form 3 would be similar, but just a little bit larger since you're in your Dragon form. And then your 4 would just be a D form. It would be fast, but not instant. I would say faster than like a Fafnir D form, but still not so slow because, you know, you're an assassin. You could also maybe add an aspect where you can make another water illusion, a water clone, like in your 1 with your D form, so that like you could 1 away and then your clone would be back here and then you'd be deforming over here, but people couldn't see you. Something like that, but maybe that'd be too broken. Obviously, this would really buff him quite a bit. You can nerf his base kit. You could balance around this. But I just think this would be fun and just make him feel so much more impactful as a freaking dragon when you execute people. So yeah, that's a bit of a re-kit, but hey. Aphrodite, some changes here too. A very frustrating character that I think this helps. This makes her more fun in my opinion, gives her more options, but also lowers her frustration when it comes to just being stupid. Click 4, save everybody, make everybody damage immune, and I'll show you why. So, Aphro ult functions sort of like Merlin. So when you click 4, you can also click either 1, 2, or 3. So her 4 doesn't do anything on its own. You have to click 1, 2, or 3 after you click 4, sort of like Merlin. Unless it'll just automatically use a random one, I suppose. So your 1 pulls your linked teammate to you, and it's on a shorter cooldown. So this is like phase, PHASE in predecessor. you yoink your character, your teammate to you, so this can get people out of some hairy situations, pull them away, kind of save them that way. Not that far of a range, but, you know, a decent amount. Then her 2 would give your teammate CC immunity and push enemies away like your normal 2, but a bit larger. And this would be on more of a medium cooldown, so maybe let's say like 60 or 70 seconds, maybe even longer, 90 seconds. And then her 3 becomes a better heal than her base form 3. It gives cooldown reduction, remove the cooldown reduction from her base 3, and damage increase. So this is like your go button. So instead of giving CC immunity to save people, pulling your teammates to save them, you give them like a go button. All right, you're healed. You got your cooldowns back. You got a damage increase. Get in there. And this would be like a medium to longer cooldown as well. So you have to choose. You can't just click one button that does everything for you. CC immunity, damage immunity. I mean, damage immunity is just such a frustrating aspect. So sorry if you guys hear Bria and Serena are playing games in the background and yelling. But yeah, so this would just give her some options, make you have to decide, and kind of remove that frustrating aspect of just pure damage immunity and one button, get out of jail free card. So yeah. Also higher raise her skill ceiling as well, which I think would be cool for a character that's pretty brain dead. So one small change for Apollo. I think Apollo has a pretty cool kit, just my opinion. But you could give his passive a visual effect, like beats per minute. And if you auto on beat with the passive, it extends the passive indefinitely. So you can keep going forever as long as you're autoing on beat. Since he's a god of music, I believe. I don't believe he is one of the gods of music. This would just give like a incentive for that, and just give like a little mini game in Smite. A lot of these things that we're adding are extra mini games because mini games are always fun in Smite, in my opinion. So this would just be another thing you could do with that, incentivize that god of music aspect. And so like, let's say you have like 1.5 attack speed and you get your passive, it's supposed to be for 5 autos, but if you auto exactly on the beat, it's not just holding left click. You can't just hold left click and it will do it. You have to do it exactly on the beat. It'll keep going. You'll get that increased attack speed that entire time. So, you know, I think a pretty cool change for a god of music. So continuing on. Arachne. Okay, bit of a rekit here. And by a bit, I mean quite a bit. Some of this are just spitballing. I think you could do a lot of different cool stuff with Arachne. She has a very lame kit in Smite 1 right now. But yeah. So make your ult able to jump from wall to wall, sort of like Spider-Man, and you leave webbing across the walls. So like, let's say you're walking in the jungle, there's a wall right here, there's a wall over here, you could jump between them. You're going to leave webbing down here that's going to slow and do damage if you jump over the enemies. Then when you walk through your own web, which is your 3, your 3 would basically still be the same with this kit. You spawn a spider that follows her for 30 seconds, and then it will auto attack people if you get near them. Sort of like her old kit with her 1. Then you make her 1 her old 2, which is when she rode opponents' heads and sucked them dry for heals and did damage. I don't think she was untargetable during that at that time, but I think she should be untargetable. Sort of like a Mammon 3, but just a little bit different and a little bit of lifesteal, or at least a heal. So sort of like combining her 1 with her old 2. And then her 2 becomes a duration with no limit or stun. So sort of the same that it is now, but you can also recast it to do a range shot of the web and also allow it to stun multiple enemies or cocoon multiple enemies. Because I think it's weird that, like, it'd be really cool if you could walk around in a team fight and cocoon this person, cocoon that person, get multiple stuns off. And also reward like skill shots, because the range part of it would be a little bit harder to hit. It's not just going to be this easy thing to hit that you can just keep stunning everybody. So yeah, those are some potential changes. Maybe one of those, maybe 2 of those, maybe the whole thing. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different stuff you could do with Arachne and still kind of keeping to her essence that I think people will still enjoy. So yeah, moving on. Ares, okay? Make his ult only pull people who he has chained, but his ult also gives 2-second cooldown reduction to chains for each person connected. Then you could also reduce his ult to like 50 or 60 seconds because you really have to hit those skill shots for it to even pull them. So you're not going to be pulling as easily. Blink ulting isn't going to instant guarantee beads. You're going to have to put yourself in a bad spot to even get your ult off, and thus force beads or whatever, is the relic. So yeah, just rewarding skill shot a little bit more, reducing the frustration factor when it comes to CC. But I think it also make him really fun. If your just ult was on a shorter cooldown and you're always like getting your chains back up if you're hitting your skill shots, I think it'd be cool. And then allow him, I said earlier, just basically change his 3 to anything else. Something I cooked up pretty shortly was just allow him to place his 3 on the ground, It continues the fire, and it also blocks enemies. So if you're like running somebody down, you can get in front of them, place your shield, and sort of body block them. And then if Ares walks through his own flame, since he's like the god of war, he's got all this armor on, it'd be so sick if he just walks through his flame and comes out the other side. His 2 doubles, so he gets extra prots, extra HP 5 and everything that it applies. Gives movement speed and small haste effect to his teammates based on how much intelligence he has in Smite 2. I think it'd just be so badass if you just see an Ares walk through his own flame and his whole team gets empowered because he's the god of war and everyone's like, yeah, let's get behind him, you know what I mean? And then you can click 3 again and it retrieves his shield, sort of like Zeus 2 in current Smite 1. So yeah, that's just one thing you could do as 3 if you want to kind of keep it similar, but kind of maybe reward his support playstyle a little bit more. Since right now it's just literally, it's such a weird ability for Ares to have as a guardian, just a pure damage ability that does percent health damage. So yeah, can kind of give him some more options with that. Moving on, we have Artemis. So successful traps alert Tusky, enhancing your next base ability. So an example of that could be that her 3 becomes a moon strike because Artemis is also the goddess of the moon. So it's a smaller version of her current 3, but it does more damage, sort of like Chronos 1. Rewards skill shots a little bit more, but you know, obviously hitting harder. And then you can make her 2 have like an auto ricochet or something cool like that. Didn't really cook that far with that one, but you know, autos ricocheting could be kind of cool if that was her enhanced ability ever too. So yeah, you kind of do whatever you want with that, but just make it so that hitting your trap feels a little bit more rewarding and give her some more options. And then also allow her to store traps like Pele can with her 1. So you can maybe have 2, maybe even 3 traps at once, and then you could even CC chain people with that, but obviously reduce the duration of Artemis 1 on its own. Or just, you know, being able to place multiple, like, so if you're walking into a lane or running away from somebody, you can cut off multiple options to kind of save yourself, since you're already a very low mobility and easy to kill character. So yeah, nothing too crazy with her, I'd say. Moving on. Artio. Some pretty simple, straightforward changes with Artio, but I think this make her so much more fun. So your druid form now has ranged autos, and your bear form has cleave because you're literally like swiping them and you're a bear. Like I feel like it should have cleave to begin with. So that would already be really cool. Something you could do with that is if you're in your druid form, you could auto the enemy to group up the wave, switch to your bear form, start cleaving it down with your autos. Obviously you'd have a lot more build variety with that because you have different things you can go. You can more auto attack build if you want, yada yada. And then also make it so in your bear form, you scale off 100% strength, and then in your druid form, you scale off 100% intelligence, more build variety, and just makes sense thematically. And then you could also allow her ult, her passive ult, the one that stance swaps. You could scale it, so the more points you put into it, the more percentage of each stance goes to the other. I just said 25% here, but you know, something like that could be cool. So yeah, I think that would make her pretty freaking cool, and it's pretty straightforward. Athena, we didn't cook up too much, just a small, simple change you could throw onto her. I think it makes much more sense than her 3 right now, though, that's for sure. So allow her 3 to follow her, and it gives her mitt and lowers projectile damage for people autoing through you, so you can walk at the enemies, click your 3, keep walking at them to protect your teammates from the projectiles they're shooting past you. And then if you auto them after you click your 3, it refreshes the effect, so you can keep walking them with that shield, giving some mitigations and lowering projectile damage. Because right now it's a shield wall, but all it does is slow and do damage. It doesn't really make any sense at all for a shield wall for a support character. So I think it'd make a lot more sense with this. So it basically functions still the same. You'd be able to guarantee it a little bit better by being able to walk at them with it, so you could lower the damage if you want. But then yeah, it just makes more sense for a shield wall. Moving on to Atlas. Something you'll notice, especially if we get to the part 2 and part 3 of the videos, is that the newer characters aren't going to have too much changes because they're already pretty freaking cool in my opinion, and they also still feel pretty fresh as well, I think. I just think a lot of the old characters have kind of been power crept / just didn't really get to cook that much because a lot of old developers that didn't really know much about the game as people do now. You know, current devs have been playing the game for 10 plus years. You know, I think they could probably cook a little bit better. So yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say with these new gods. So for example, Atlas, all you to do with him is while his 1 is deployed, no burden / weight, since you don't have the entire universe on your back, you get 20% movement speed, 50% haste, and your 3 becomes faster. So instead of it being that slow dash that doesn't go too far, it becomes pretty freaking fast, and you can zoom down a lane or zoom at somebody. And then to balance that out, you could just make the effect of the slow not be as crazy because you don't have the universe slapping them as well. So it just makes sense thematically. So it's easier to guarantee, but not as much of an effect. And then also allows passive to proc on his one. Pretty simple changes, make them fun. But like I said, newer gods don't usually need as much. So, yep. Okay. This one might be absolutely busted, but I think it'd be so cool and raise Awilix skill ceiling even more. So give her 2 charges on her 3. I know that sounds crazy. You're probably thinking, oh, I'm going to get knocked up twice in succession. Yes. Hitting 2 within short window knocks up from the front. So if you're staring at somebody and you double 3 them and you hit both, it knocks them up from the front. And then 1 charge knocks up from behind. So if you're behind them the whole time and you knock them up, you can knock them up again with 2 charges. And you can nerf the damage slightly. But you can also pull 2 targets if both knocked up by her own 3. So basically what this means is if you double knock up somebody with 1-3 from behind, you hit both of them and they're both looking away, you can pull both of them with your ult. Or if you use your 3 twice, you send one out, it knocks up somebody far away, and then somebody close to you knock up with your second charge of your 3. So they both basically get knocked up at the same time. You can pull them both into you at the same time, which would be a crazy high skill ceiling play that would be so freaking cool to pull off. And the fact that, I mean, it's not that you would be able to pull multiple people. Like, say somebody like a Sylvanas knocks up all entire team and you click your Awilix ult. You can't pull all 5 of them. It's only people you've knocked up with your own 3. So I don't think it'd be that busted in that way. And then also with this change, allow her to use her 3 on her horse. I say horse, it's just a joke. That's just what adapting calls it, or Kenneth calls it. Allow her to use her 3 on her cat, I guess, if she has 2 charges available. So what you could do with this is when you're running around on your horse, you could 3, if you have 2 charges, knock them up, jump away, like jump under a tower, and then ult them, which would just be another freaking sick play that could be added with the fact that she had 2 charges on her 3. So just some cool variety and some high skill ceiling plays that you could add to Awilix, who is also already a pretty high skill ceiling character. So yeah. I think it'd be pretty fun. Again, this might be pretty broken, but a lot of the things and a lot of suggestions I'm saying are just kind of broken in OP. And in my opinion, I'm of the mindset that if everything is broken and everything's OP, then everybody can have fun. And there's always options to outplay each other because there's so many cool things in the game. So yeah, moving on. I notice I've been saying that a lot. Baba Yaga. Allow Baba to toggle her house movement on her own, so she gets to choose. She can keep it stationary for stacks. She can have it follow her, which will heal her, or she can send it out to forge ingredients like Gilga quests that are on the map, and they'll empower her potions. So she can just already see it on the map. Maybe there's icons. She can send it out, and it'll grab it and bring it back to her, and then they'll empower her potions. While she does that, it's not going to give her stacks, and it's not going to give her heals, but it will just give her another mini game to play in the middle of a game to increase kind of her theme and everything. And I think it'd just be cooler because her house is just kind of like, it's a cool passive, but you could do more with it. And it's a little bit lame that it just does it all. It's on its own. It sort of lowers her skill ceiling. So yeah. And then also allow Baba to drink her own potions instead of throwing them out to alter/empower other abilities. Didn't cook too far with that one, but you can kind of get the idea behind that. Maybe inspire it a little bit. So yeah, maybe if you drink a certain potion, it would make her one go from a stupid oval to a big circle, something like that. Or maybe make it a cone or something. So yeah, moving on. Bacchus. I think this is one of my favorite changes in the entire PowerPoint. Changes 1. Bacchus no longer uses mana. He uses drunkenness, or alcohol, I guess. Alcoholism. His passive auto sips every 5 seconds. It doesn't stop animations of abilities. It just automatically, you just take a sip. Take a sip, young Skywalker. You just take a sip every 5 seconds. So it's sort of like Emoja. Instead of using mana, she uses Omi. Instead of using mana, Bacchus uses drunkenness. His 1 becomes a throwable drink. It can hit allies. It heals them and gives them damage mitigation because, they got that liquid courage. So they're feeling a little bit better. It can hit enemies. It does damage to them and reduces their prots because now they're drunk. They're going to be taking more damage, although that's not necessarily how it works, but you get the point. And then he can also drop it on the ground to drink for himself. So he can throw it on the ground or just drop it so it doesn't get destroyed. And he can drink it for instant drunkage so that he can get his passive up because his passive would still be the same. You're just allowing his 1 to actually be an ability and not just this thing that you drink because all it does is increase your passive and give you prots and stuff. But I don't know. I think that this change alone would just make him so much more fun to play, give him a little bit more support utility, and yeah, just make another character that doesn't have to use mana, because every character they made that's done that is super, super cool. So do it to Bacchus. So yeah, do you do something along those lines? You don't even have to change the one that much, but just, I don't know, you just also in Smite 2, he automatically spawns full drunk, I'm pretty sure. So like his one is just so useless. Change it. Another pretty freaking cooked, kind of cooked with this one, I'd say. And this might sound OP at first, but I really don't think it'd be that broken. So eating minions makes Baka character model grow, and there's no minion limit. So you can get really big. He can become a big old monster. And once you reach a certain limit, let's say you eat 100 minions. I don't know if that's the right number, but let's just say 100 minions. You can permanently upgrade one of your first 3 abilities to level 6. So every character in the game can only level abilities to level 5. But Baka, if he gets this minigame achieved, he can upgrade an ability to level 6. Some examples of what it could do: maybe his 3 becomes a golden blade, so he has AoE autos. Maybe his 2 allows him to eat objectives that are like 15% HP or 10% HP. Maybe it allows his 1 to have multiple jumps, so he can jump in and then jump away right away. So he can have like 2 charges of that. You know, stuff like that. Something that could be pretty crazy and would really reward him for going crazy on the eating. And then also, you could make his ult very similar, a big maw where he's got this big mouth going crazy mode. But when it ends, it stuns / executes anyone under 20%. And the reason this would be an execute is because if they're under 20%, he would literally eat them. And there'd be an animation where he eats the enemy god. And I think they would just make his ult so much cooler. It's already such a weird, like, ult. He gets this big mouth and he's chomping on him, and all of a sudden it just disappears. There's no, like, animation. There's no, like, oomph to it. You know what I mean? You can still spawn the minions if you want it to. But I think this should just be so much cooler. And, of course, an execute would be OP, but under 20% really isn't that crazy. Most people are dying at that point anyway, especially if Abaka's already on top of them. So, yeah, I think that'd be pretty freaking cool. Just in general, just changing character models based on how the game is going and based on certain things, I think hires can explore a lot more of. So, moving on. Baka Kujira. You could do a lot of different stuff with Baka because his kit was pretty uninspired going into Smite 1. And there's a lot of reasons for that I'm not going to get into. Kind of feel bad for the design team. But just some 2 changes that I think would already make him pretty cool and a lot better to play is you can make his ult grab enemies or teammates, go underwater, and can TP pretty freaking far. Not anywhere, like you're not going to go from the mid lane all the way to your fountain so you can just insta-kill an enemy god. But like, let's say from like tower to tower, so from like your tier 1 to the tier 2, go pretty freaking far and kind of displace people. I think that'd be pretty sick, especially as like a whale type character. And just give him some more themes of being like in the water. So like when you go under with the character, you know, it's like there's water and stuff. There's like animations for that. And then additionally, his 1 could pull enemies toward him with a wave animation that rips them in and still gives the same benefits of like the extra auto damage and stuff like that. So you just cast a wave that like maybe goes out and then yoinks them in. Sort of keep people close to you because that's kind of the whole point of the character. His 3 and his 2 could be the same. Sometimes you just need some simple abilities combined with other things to make a character feel cool, and I think that would probably do it with him. Moving on to Baron Samedi. Each successful Baron 2 adds an extra effect to Baron's Brew to incentivize keeping it later in the game. Another mini game that you could play. So let's say you hit like 50 Baron 2s in a game. Maybe the extra effect that Baron's Brew will give is that for 5 seconds after consuming Baron's Brew, you get like some movement speed, or you get a haste effect, or you get like 2-second cooldown reduction on all of your base abilities right after clicking it. Just stuff like that. Stuff to really reward like the mini game aspect of it. And you know, I just think Baron's Brew is already pretty trash, like to begin with, like just right at the beginning of the game. So later in the game, if you're able to keep it, and Baron is able to kind of have that support playstyle as well, since it's kind of the utility mage type kit. I think it'd be cool to do something like that. Have the brew do something cool. Moving on to Bastet. Make her 3 applying a dot and give Bastet movement speed plus lifesteal towards the target instead of spawning a cat, because the cat is a super frustrating part of her kit that nobody likes except for Bastet players. So just do that and make it her new passive, or make her old passive that are on her 3, but make her new passive allow her to climb walls, gain extra vision while she's on top of the walls, like in the jungle as the cat, as she is. and get like a 15% damage increase by ambushing from up top. And she's also untargetable up there. So sort of like Cleo passive, but instead of being in the wall, she's up top on it. She can't like cast abilities from up there except for her one. She can jump down and kind of ambush people. So I think that'd be pretty cool. And this would, obviously these are all for fun. So this would be a pretty crazy endeavor for Hi-Res to work on, because it's going to have to add some verticality to Smite. But I think it'd be pretty freaking cool. And with some of the other changes, I think it would pay off, because then you could add some other verticality / wall changes to the game. And we'll get into that. So yeah. Bellona. So for Bellona, they already did something with her passive. Depending on which stance you're in, which weapon you have out, you get a different benefit. I think her 1 is like prots, her 2 is like power, her 3 is maybe HP 5. I don't actually know, but that's how it works in Smite 2 now. So to add on to that, depending on which weapon Bellona has out, when she ults, it changes the functionality / the art of the ult. So if you have your shield out, your shield and your sword, your 1, it drops a shield circle right when you land. You cage them in just a small Odin cage for 3 to 4 seconds, and you give a small shield to your allies that are nearby. When you have your 2 out, it's the same as it is now, basically. It stuns and gives power. And then if you have your 3 out, it gives lifesteal, damage increase to minions, and movement speed to teammates. So this would be the ult. This would be the objective form of the ult, where if you wanted to burn an objective, you have your Scourge out, then you ult it, gives lifesteal, damage increase to minions and objectives, and movement speed to your teammates so they can kite around. But also, since she has her other arm free when you use her 3, that's the only stance which she has free, has a hand free, that is, because in her 1, she has her shield and her sword out. When she's in her 2, she has to hold both hands on her hammer. But when she has her 3, she has the Scourge, but then she's doing nothing with her other hand. She should be able to pick up her flag that she dropped with her ult in her offhand, and she can actually push the aura anywhere she wants. So you could ult the objective, say you ult Fire Giant, you get all those increase, like damage increase to minions, the lifesteal, movement speed. You kill the objective, you grab the flag, and for the next 5 seconds, you run at the enemies, and your teammates get movement speed and damage increase and lifesteal, sort of like a Gilga 3, and you just sort of run at them. You just rally here, literally. Of course, this wouldn't give any CC, give it a weakness, and yeah, this would just give her some options when it comes to utilizing her ult. And then also you could add a 4th thing, where if you just want to have a standard use of the ult, like let's say you just wanted to do damage and stun like her 2 would, maybe you could just click 4 twice or something like that. But yeah, just give her some options and some different things. Maybe she's more of a support. You want to use your 3 more. Maybe you want to use your 1 more if you're more of a support. Yeah, or if you're playing her in the jungle, you just want to slam them and give power and a stun and just hit really hard. So yeah, sorry if I've been rambling, guys. It's been a long day, let's say. And this PowerPoint was giving me some trouble. But anyway, another freaking sick change in my opinion. We kind of cooked with this one as well. Cabrakan changes passive to allow Cabrakan to permanently destroy walls on the map every 240 to 300 seconds. It just creates a path. So this isn't going to destroy the entire wall. It's not going to take the entire Fire Giant wall and just completely destroy it. But it will just make a path, like almost like a passageway within the mountains. Because Cabrakan's literally the destroyer of mountains. Like that's his title or whatever. So just allow him to do that. Literally allow him to destroy walls. And just have like a small path that you can walk through. And just maybe every 240 to 300 seconds, you could bounce around it. If it's really OP, make it a longer duration. If it's not that broken, make it a shorter duration. I think it would just be so cool. And it would just permanently change the dynamic on the map. You could maybe do some cool stuff with this, where like you can allow like a jungle gank by destroying this certain wall into the duo lane. Yeah. Or maybe you just have your passive up when you're ganking a certain lane and you just destroy it and walk in and blink on somebody. Stuff like that. I think it'd just be so cool. Okay. And then also changes ult slightly. So Cab can rip rocks off the walls to increase his ult size and strength. So it temporarily leaves a hole in the wall. So it's sort of like his passive, but it ended up just like absorbing and going back to its normal form. Maybe it only lasts like 5 to 10 seconds. This will just make his ult a little bit cooler and gives him some more personality on the map of being the destroyer of mountains. So he's just ripping rocks off walls and making his ult. You know how his ult is, I think, 3 autos right now. So let's say you get enough rocks off the wall, it could be 6 autos. And instead of it being that size, it can be a bit larger. So yeah. And then another thing is you could make Cab 2 have a second option, or just change it completely, because it's Cab kit is kind of weird. He has a stun on his 1 and a stun on his 2, and they're both just like melee ranged abilities, which is fine for Guardian, but it's just just doesn't really make that much sense. So I think you could give him a second option on his 2 or replace it entirely, where he grabs a rock from the ground and throws it for a ranged stun. And it can go really far. It just depends on how high you aim with your mouse or your controller or whatever. So sort of like Rampage in Predecessor, if you guys have seen that. And yeah, just given some ability to have a little bit of range, and it'd just be like a nice rewarding skill shot ability that you could snipe people with, which would be really cool, because we need more abilities like that, in my opinion. Yeah, I think we kicked with Cabrakan. Chaac, just one small change. They already made it so you can take your axe back, which I like. And it's fine to have some simple kits with a bit of a skill expression, which I think Chaac has. So allow Chaac to electrocute his own rain with his ult or his 1, but either both or just one of them. It's up to you. So it plays like a cool animation where the water gets electrocuted and goes sending out, and then it changes the rain to electro water instead of it just being rain that slows them. Maybe instead of slowing them now, it trembles them and does a little bit of damage. So something like that could be cool. Moving on. Chang'e. Pretty vague with this one. This is an idea I've had for a kit for a very long time. Since Chang'e, I believe, is part like goddess of music. I think I don't know. I'm pretty sure she is. Doesn't have to be with Chang'e. I think it would work with Chang'e because her base kit, her current kit, isn't really that inspired and isn't really that cool. So if she is a goddess of music, something you could do, like I said, this is an idea I've had for a long time, is give her a full re-kit, apart from maybe her passive, because I think her passive is pretty cool. Do a play on music, where you give her a King Arthur type kit, where you have 1 charged ult, but 3 different stances. The charged ult doesn't have to be the same as King Arthur ult, where it takes like 15 seconds to get it. It could literally take 5 seconds to get it. And the ult doesn't have to be that crazy of an ult. It could just do something small. But you have 3 different stances. And the stance changes based on your ability, or when you use your ability, sort of like King Arthur right now. If you use the correct combos to make the charged ult, it'll play a pleasant melody because you're the goddess of music. So if you use your combos correctly, you auto-cancel it in between, you sequence your abilities in the right way, it'll give a pleasant melody, like a da-da-da or something, you know? And if you do an incorrect combo, you don't auto-cancel correctly, all that, you just basically don't do the correct sequence of abilities, it gives you a harsh melody or like an off-tune type beat where it's like or something, you know? Something like that. To play on the music type of the kit and the goddess of music or the god of music, whoever it may be, and just give like a really high skill ceiling character that would give you some immediate feedback if you're using your combos correctly or not. I think that'd be really cool. It doesn't even have to be like a small melody. It could play, maybe it's a charge ult where it's like King Arthur, where you take him into the air and for the next 5 seconds it plays like a whole like little piece of music. So something like that I think could be really cool. Pretty vague, of course, but decided to throw that in for Chang'e. Moving on to Chernobog. So this is where we're kind of skipping some gods because we kind of just skipped around a little bit because we had some ideas for certain characters. So Chernobog, he has a new passive where, depending on whether you build intelligence or strength in your build, you become Bellobog, which is his twin. If you guys didn't know, in Chernobog's lore, there's Chernobog, which is the dark god, I think, and then Bellobog is the white god or the light god or something like that. So with intelligence, your character model changes based on your build. So if you're building more of a strength in Chernobog, you're a bit darker. If you're building more intelligence, you become Bellobog, and you're a bit lighter. And it makes his ult give haste effect or movement speed to teammates or something like that with enough int. Your 2 gets a little bit larger and becomes a heal because you're more of that light stance, and et cetera, et cetera. You can kind of cook with that whatever you want. The point of this is basically just give you some options between int or strength in your build and kind of like add more to that character model changing throughout the game based on builds and stuff that's happening that we talked about before. So yeah. And then you can give ability split scaling to fit the passive, since they're already kind of doing that with characters in Smite 2. Pretty cool change, I'd say. And yeah, continuing on. Yeah, we're skipping over to S because we had some ideas for Soul and I think Wukong, who's the last character. So I've been playing a lot of Soul lately, and I think one small change you can make to her is allow her to store her 2 so that you can retain heat passive while you group up the wave. Basically what this means is when you're at max heat and you're between farming, say you just did a buff and you're running to your minion wave in min lane or solo or wherever you're playing her, you sometimes will click your 2 so you can keep your heat up, but in order to clear the wave as Soul, you have to auto the front minions so they get grouped up and are a little bit squished together so you can throw your 2 out to hit them all. So this just means let her click her 2 so she can keep her heat between those the jungle camp and the minion wave, and then let her right click so it's stored so you keep your heat going because you clicked an ability, but then you can auto again, click 2 again, and then throw out your 2. So you can just clear waves really easily and just a bit of a quality of life. Not a huge change, nothing like a rekit or anything like that. Just a small change that can make her feel a little bit better. And then Wukong, allow Wukong to, or allow his clone to use his abilities while you're in your cloud. Maybe you have like a 50% effectiveness. So if you're going to your ult and your 3 is up, you click your tiger, it'll stun somebody for half the duration. It'll do half the damage. And yeah, I think just more skill expression. Another cool thing that you could add to the game. And I believe that was the last one. That is the last one. So yeah, guys, goodness gracious, this ended up being a 45-minute video. My goodness. Sorry for rambling a bit there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video regardless, and like some of the changes at least. All right, if you guys hear the people in the background. But yeah, that's basically it. Be sure to like and subscribe, and leave some ideas for God Kits down in the comments. Whether you're working off some stuff we already included or coming up with some of your own original ideas, you know, just leave them down in the comments, and be happy to read them. And of course, we're still working on all of the other God changes for the part 2, part 3, and all that in the God doc over on stream. So stop by the stream for some ideas, and you might be featured in the next video. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay safe and healthy as always. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.